Good morning, friends. So my name is Kristen Bennett. I am a female empowerment coach, and today we're discussing reparenting your inner child. So I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the saying, be who you were, be who you needed whenever you were younger. So what this means is that oftentimes as children, we have unmet needs that have not been addressed. Sometimes we have trauma. Sometimes there's some abandonment and rejection issues in there as well. And all of this manifests into our adulthood. This can come out in the ways of feeling unworthy or unlovable. It can also come out in choosing bad relationships. A lot of times you'll see past trauma in cases of domestic violence. I know this is something that I have experienced personally, and I truly believe had I done some work on myself prior to getting into those relationships, I believe that I never would have gotten that position. So addressing unmet needs. In order to address our inner child, first of all, that child needs to be able to trust us. So we need to be able to validate and acknowledge that child's feelings. So looking back on childhood, we need to take a very compassionate approach. We need to have the understanding that anything at that point in time was not our fault, because we were children. Sometimes this takes, sometimes parents aren't able to address our needs, whether that's through love and connection. Sometimes it's trauma, abandonment, rejection. So in order to address these needs, we first need to be able to trust ourselves. So looking at it like a child, you have a child pulling on your sleeve saying, love me. So how do we address that? So developing that trust, being the person that we needed whenever we were younger, sitting down and taking a look at what those feelings were. So for example, validating. If we have a parent that wasn't there for us, we need to validate that, yeah, that hurts. And we need to take a look at the feelings that are caused by that. We know that we're going to have some kind of grief whenever we're addressing the loss of a childhood. So with grief, you're going to find anger, sadness, remorse, loneliness, maybe even shame, guilt. These are all things that can be worked on. So one thing I do want to discuss is there is a very big difference between shame versus guilt. So a lot of people, whenever they have shame, they believe that they are bad. Whereas guilt is, I have done something bad. Shame leads to addiction issues. Shame leads to unworthiness and bad relationships, and causes a lot of issues as an adult. So we want to stay away from shame, but we can address guilt as well. Guilt is, I have done something bad. So that's kind of like our moral compass. It's going to tell us if we're not feeling great about something, we should probably listen to that. And we can address whenever we're feeling guilty about something. Guilt is perfectly normal. So is shame. However, shame is very damaging, whereas guilt is a more healthy component of our emotions. So some of the ways we can learn to reparent. If we're going to treat ourselves like kids, we're going to make sure that we get our 8 hours of sleep. We're going to make sure that we're eating healthy foods. We're going to make sure that we're kind and compassionate to ourselves. We're going to participate in activities like children. whether that be painting, playing in the snow, playing with dogs or animals, going to the fair or carnival. You want to develop and give yourself permission to have those fun times and actually bring out that childlike joy. Being loving and nurturing to yourself, that is absolutely important. A lot of times as children, we don't necessarily get the love and nurturing that we need to be healthy adults. So as an adult, it is our responsibility to go back and be loving and nurturing to ourselves. I know for me, I need a certain number of hours of sleep a night. I make sure I get it. Being compassionate, accepting that there are days where I'm not going to be able to go to the gym, and that is okay. I'm not going to be critical of myself. We just talked about the inner critic and the inner coach, so using that coach voice to talk to ourselves. Being around children, that often will be very, very healing for us. I actually decided to work with children because that's where I'm happiest. So whenever we're around children, they tend to bring out the best of us. Sitting down and talking with them and giving them our full attention, often it'll bring up things within ourselves that we didn't previously recognize. Another thing we can do is being around animals. Animals are absolutely unconditionally loving. So with that, we can use our animals to nurture that inner child. I mean, what child doesn't want a puppy or a pony or a kitty cat? So having those animals around, that's also very healthy for our inner child. So whenever we address our inner child, we want to validate those emotions. We want to take a look at our anger. Why are we angry? Anger is perfectly normal. It's okay to be angry. But we also want to recognize that the people in our lives often did the best that they could. We need to recognize that as children, we did the best that we could. We don't know really what's going on as children, and a lot of times we develop survival tactics that get us through, but then come adulthood, those survival tactics actually become detrimental to our health and our well-being. I don't know how much you know of my history. However, I have borderline personality disorder. It's something that was diagnosed years ago. It does stem from trauma and is very much interwoven with abandonment and rejection. Now, I would like to say this is through no fault of my parents. This is through no fault of mine. It's just the way that I perceived things whenever I was younger, and I felt like I had a lot of unmet needs, and this ended up resulting in me losing 10 years of my life to addiction. And there was a lot of shame, there was a lot of feeling unloved and unworthy, and a lot of bad relationships. And what this all breaks down to is I needed to address my inner child in order to be able to move past that. Now, this is something, there is going to be grieving involved, and it can get very intense. So I do recommend, if you are going to delve into inner child work, I do recommend doing it with a therapist. However, another really great method is through EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So I have gone through EMDR as well. And basically what it does is it allows you to reprocess things. So it's not just stuck. We don't feel like we're in the moment. It's used a lot with PTSD. It allows us to kind of distance ourselves from that point in time in our life and recognize different things surrounding the incidents that allow us to move past that. So we're also going to have sadness, we're going to have remorse, we're going to have loneliness. So we need to fill those holes with other things. That's where the acting like a child, and there's a difference between being childish and acting like a child. So being childish, we often associate with being obstinate and challenging, whereas being childlike, we're going to be looking at those things like playing in the snow or building snowmen or painting, stuff like that. So going back to the grieving emotions, we need to fill all of those with the childlike joy, loving and nurturing ourselves, being around children and animals. There is a lot of different ways that we can do this. And I do hope that with all of these, we're going to be able to address those manifestations in our adulthood. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I would like to go a little further into this. If you're interested, I would love to hear from you. If you are interested in hearing more about reparenting your inner child, add a comment below. I would love to talk more about it. It's just such a huge, huge topic. It's hard to kind of get all the pinpoints. So if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, I would be more than happy to do a full live video. It could honestly probably be about an hour long just on reparenting that inner child. I know this is something that has really worked well for me. And actually visualizing your inner child. So sometimes when I'm feeling rejected, I'll actually visualize myself and just give my baby Kristen a hug. And being compassionate, telling myself that it's okay, this isn't something from your childhood, this is completely normal. And it allows me to move past those things without taking things personally. So yeah, I hope you got some information out of this. This one was a little willy-nilly compared to my other ones. I do know that. It's just such a huge topic. So yeah, if you would like to hear more, pop a comment below, and I would be more than happy to do a full live video on this one alone. I hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you Friday morning to talk about letting go of emotions. The letting go piece can be pretty difficult. Emotions tend to stick with us for a while, and they manifest themselves in different parts of our body. So we're going to talk about different ways we can let go of those emotions physically through body scanning and whatnot, and mentally through self-talk. So I hope to see you Friday morning, 6:30 Mountain Time, and 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time again. Looking forward to seeing you there. Peace out.